Everyone, today we are going to use the work of Odita as inspiration for our art making. Now, he is an artist that lives in Philadelphia, and he paints large, sometimes very large, paintings that focus on spaces of color. And you can see there's a lot of horizontal and vertical and zigzag spaces of color in his pictures. This is one example of his painting. Some of his paintings are painted on the sides of buildings as a mural or an installation, and then some are painted on panels or canvases as well. But he doesn't just choose colors randomly. His choice for creating colors oftentimes comes from his personal experiences and his memories and his understanding of the world. So even looking at colors from like the most popular colors of the 90s or the popular colors of the 80s. And there's a difference in those kinds of colors. So we're going to be creating a picture today where we explore the use of color. If you want to maybe use your house as inspiration and think about the colors you see in and around your house, you could do that. Or you can just explore color in general. So when we get started, we are going to need a blank sheet of paper. We are also going to need a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you can use something like a piece of cardboard that you can have a straight edge on, and then the pencil to do the drawing with. Then you're gonna want your watercolors, or if you don't have watercolors, you're looking for red, yellow, and blue. You could even use food dyes to do this with. So then a cup with some water and a brush. I am using a plastic lid as a mixing tray because I do not have the tray that came with the paints that's usually on the lid side of it. This is actually from, I think, like a French's fried onions, but a lot of plastic tubs will come with a white lid, and that's perfectly great for a mixing tray as well. I always like to have a tissue or a paper towel on hand when I'm using watercolor paints because that helps with kind of brush cleaning and things like that, and it also helps if I get like a puddle, I can soak it up. So when you have those things ready, you're going to start with the design. And when you're doing the design, you're going to want to start with some lines, some straight lines. You'll notice there aren't any curves in this. So when we do that, and I'm going to go ahead and use my ruler here for this, I usually start with a couple of lines that go straight across the paper. I tend to like to angle my lines so they're more diagonal. But I'm just going to add a couple in there. As far as holding the ruler, make sure you're holding it in the center. Don't hold it on an end because then it's going to drift. Also, make sure you've got a good grip on it. I like to either use my finger and my thumb and place them on there, or if I turn the ruler this way, laying all my fingertips down, I call it the spider grip, that can be helpful as well. Now, if your ruler's too short for your paper, let's say I want to do a line this way, you can do most of the line and then move the ruler and then complete the line. So you can do it that way as well. Now, so far I've done 3 lines. My challenge is, say, let's do 10. If you want to do more than 10, that's great. As you add more lines, you're going to have more spaces. Now, right now, my lines have all gone completely across the paper, but they don't have to go completely across the paper. They can also go from, I like to do it from a point where they intersect, and you can do lines from there. You can also do lines that go from just one line to another line, like that, rather than going from the line to the edge of the paper. You have your choices. Right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got 5 lines. So if I'm gonna try and do 10, I'm gonna need a few more. So I'm gonna do one here. I like to break up my big spaces, so I'm gonna do one here. So that's 2 more. I'm gonna come from that point there and come across. There's 3 more, so I need 2 more. I'm gonna do one over here where this big space is, and then I think I wanna do one that comes across that intersection right there. All right, so now I've got my 10 lines. When I'm done doing that, I'm gonna put the ruler aside because I don't need that anymore. So when I'm using watercolors, I like to put a little drop of water in to help get them kind of started. And honestly, I probably should have done that before I started drawing, but that's okay. I'm not going to be using my brown today. I'm going to focus on the colors that we see in the color wheel. So I actually am just going to be using yellow, yellow, red, and blue. Those are my primary colors. Those colors will make all the rest. So if you want to explore with just yellow, red, and blue, that's great. You can also use black to make your colors darker, With watercolors, if you don't have white, you can add more water to make the color lighter. So I'm just using my blue, my yellow, my red, and I added a little water to my black there. So when I get started, if I'm just gonna explore with color and not focus on colors that I see around me, I like to start by putting the yellow, red, and blue on the paper. So I'm gonna get a little yellow here on my brush, kind of let that water soften it up a bit. And then I'm gonna pick one of these spaces here to put my yellow in. So when I do this, I wanna go along the edge first. Now, watercolors, you have to be really careful and not use too much water because then they'll start to drift across the paper. So doing the edge first means the edge will dry first, which is good because if I'm gonna put paint here, I don't want edges to be wet because then they'll start to mix. So that really helps to give it that edge first before you fill in the middle. So, like I said, I like to add the yellow, red, and blue first before I start my color mixing. Make sure you have a nice clean brush between colors. And get this red going here, kind of mix it up a little bit with the water I put in it. So I am not gonna do red next to yellow because yellow is still a little bit wet. So I'm gonna let yellow dry a little bit. If you're having trouble getting it dry, you can always use something and kind of, you know, fan over the paper too, or even use a little fan on it. But I like to just give it space because it'll dry pretty quick if I'm not using too much water. So normally I can go back in a couple of minutes and paint next to it, but that's why we're spacing these colors out. All right, so once I get my edge done, again, go back, get a little bit more, fill in the middle. So there's my red space. Okay, so then I'm gonna move on and do my blue space. All right, and I think this would be a safe spot for my blue space. So I'm gonna do my edge first. It's kind of nice tracing. I'm not pressing real hard on the brush. I'm holding it like a pencil. If your color starts to fade, it might mean that you have too much water and not enough paint. So if that happens, you might go back and get some more paint without getting more water. All right, and then once I've done that, I can fill in the middle, and I don't think I need more paint yet. I can actually drag the paint that I used for the edges kind of into the middle. That way I'm not getting a big puddle. So you always want to spread out what you have before getting more, because otherwise you get those puddles and they just go everywhere and make a mess. Okay, so I've got my yellow, red, and my blue. So now I'm gonna start my color mixing. And when I'm doing my color mixing, what I wanna do is put the paint on the mixing tray. So I'm gonna start with, I like blue a lot. I have a lot of blue and green in my house, so I'm gonna focus a lot on those colors. I do have a lot of colors everywhere in my house, but blue and green are the ones I have the most of. So I'm gonna go ahead and make green. To do that, I'm gonna start with my yellow, and if you look here at this, you'll see if I look at my green, I need my yellow and my blue, and my green's in between. So I'm gonna put some yellow down on this tray. I kind of twirl the brush to sort of squeeze it out. You could pinch the brush too, but then you're gonna get it on your fingers. So I just kind of twirl the brush there. And then I'm gonna clean my brush, make sure it's definitely clean. You might need clean water a couple of times while you're doing this too. And I'm just gonna start with a little bit of blue here, because I don't know how much blue I need to make green. And it looks like what I got was plenty. So now I'm gonna add this color that I've made to my picture. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna use this spot. This is actually a pretty close green to what I decorated my living room with. I have a lot of kind of leafy plant prints in my living room, so this is a perfect green for that. All right. Now, if you're having trouble like getting your paint to spread out because maybe you didn't make a huge chunk of it on the mixing tray, you can always add a little water to your brush and kind of use that to help move the paint around. All right, so I'm gonna play with this green because I do have a lot of green in my house. So I'm gonna add a little more blue to this green now and kind of change that color. So now I've got more of a blue-green, and if I want even more blue, I'm gonna have to clean my brush every time I get more blue. But I can grab a little bit more even and change it even more. So you can really start to change your colors, but just be careful where you put them. I notice my yellow's mostly dry over here. It's a little wet up here, so I'm gonna stay away from that still. You can see here, I've got a whole different green just by kind of playing with that color. Now you can play with it the other direction too. So right now I've been adding a lot of blue to it, but if I want to change it the other direction, then I'm going to need to add more yellow to it. If I want to make it lighter, then I need to add more water to it. So if I want to, I can take some water and kind of mix it in there. And that is going to give me a different version. So then maybe I'll come over here I think that side is pretty much dry. So I'm gonna come over here, and now you can see I've got a lighter one. And that's a much lighter version of that green. Now, get that edge real good. Now if I want to go and I want to add a bunch of yellow in, it's going to change it again. So now I've got a completely different green over here, more of a yellow green. Oops, I guess that's the space it's going in. I think I can wipe that off. So it's fun to just play with one color at a time, and then once I'm done kind of playing with my greens, I can go in and play more with my blues. And so I have a lot of blues, and then my daughter's room actually has a lot of purples in it. So I think I'll use my blue and my red here to kind of play with those blues and purples. If I want to make a really dark green, I'll just show you this real quick. Black is dangerous to play with sometimes because it's really strong. So if you're gonna use black and make a darker color, you want just the tiniest little bit there on the tip, because a little bit of black goes a long way. So I actually just made a really dark color here. I'll show you over in the spot right here. So you can see it darkened it already, which is that tiny bit. I made it much darker. Okay, all right, so you can, if your palette's full here that you've been painting with, you can clean that if you want. You can use the tissue for that, kind of wipe it clean, or if you have space on it and you don't want to worry about that yet, you don't need to. All right, so now I'm going to play with my blue. So I'm going to get a bunch of blue on here and add a little water to it so I can make more. All right, so that's a pretty good little pile there. So now I'm going to add just a tiny bit of red here to my blue and kind of change that color up a little bit. And then add that somewhere to my picture. So I think this edge on the red here is dry. The green's a little bit wet though. So maybe I will go and do the space here. So you can see just that tiny bit of red has completely changed my blue. So I'm gonna try and get my edges real good here, because now I'm starting to combine colors so they're sharing edges. So this is really important to go slow when you're near those edges so that you don't accidentally paint over another color. So this blue that I made is actually pretty close to a wall color I use. I'd say maybe it's a little bit darker. All right, there we go. I actually have a light blue on the outside of my house, so I think I'm gonna probably add some water to this. And you gotta be careful here if you're adding water. My water's got a lot of green in it now, so you might have to get clean water if you're gonna add it to the color. All right, so now I'm gonna use this lighter one over here. And then maybe I decide to go ahead and add a little bit more red now. Get more of a purple going. So now I've made a purple color that I can use. And I'm gonna put that, I think this edge is dry here, but that one's really wet. So let's see, maybe over here. All right, so you get the idea. So you're just playing with your color. You can use something for inspiration to create the colors of a place. And maybe it's a fun trip you took and you wanna create the colors from a trip that you took. Maybe it's where you live. Maybe it's your favorite place to go. It could even be the colors of all your favorite toys. Or you can just experiment and play with color. It's okay to do that too. But basically we want to add a new color to each space. So you're just going to constantly keep changing those colors around to create new versions. And when you're done, everything should be painted kind of like this one is here. All right, I hope you have fun. I'll see you later.